Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shiur.
Shalom Bracha and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Shabbos Daf Tes. Right on top of the Amud says the Gemara, Achirim oimrim askupa mishamesa shtei reshuyos. Now the Gemara here is concluding the Brisa which we began learning on Daf Vav Amud Aleph, the Brisa which told us about the 4 reshuyos the Shabbos, and the Brisa concluded with several halachas in the name of Achirim. Now we know that Achirim is referring to Rabbi Meir. The Gemara here will elaborate and explain these halachas. Achirim oimrim askupa mishameshes shtei reshuyos. An askupa, which is an entranceway, a threshold, it can serve a dual purpose. It can be considered as a part of 2 different types of domains, depending on the circumstance. Bizman sha pesach pasuach kilifnim, when the doorway is open, the doorway that is in between the threshold to the interior. So when that doorway is open, kilifnim, then the askupa has a din like the interior, and one may carry in this threshold. Why? Because when the door is open, then the askupa is connected, it's adjacent to the interior, it's a part of the pnim, it's an extension of the pnim, and has the heter, tiltal of the pnim. But if the Pesach is null, if the doorway is closed, the doorway separating between the threshold and the interior, it is closed off. In that case, it shuts out the askupa. It chases it out. It separates. It makes a hefsek between the pnim and the askupa. In that case, the halacha of the askupa is kilachutz. One may not carry in the askupa. It is not considered to be connected to the pnim, and there's an isser tiltal there. So what type of a askupa are we speaking about? A threshold of a home, of a chatzar? Says Rashi, we're actually speaking about an askupa of a mavi. What is a mavi? A mavi is an alleyway, an approach to Rishus HaRabim. It is in between the chatzeres, the courtyards, and the Rishus HaRabim. The inhabitants of the chatzeres would walk through, they would use it as an alleyway, as an approach to Rishus HaRabim. And it was a 3-walled area. So being that it was enclosed on all 3 sides, it was a dead-end alleyway. So being that it's enclosed, surrounded by 3 sides, minat Torah, biblically it's considered as though it's a Rishus HaYachid, and one may certainly carry in this mavi, in this alleyway. Midrabanan, however, they prohibited, they asked carrying in the mavi, because since it is wide open to Rishus HaRabim, it is adjacent, it connects to Rishus HaRabim, perhaps there's room for concern that one may think that this also is part of Rishus HaRabim, and just as we can carry in this mavi, one may carry in Rishus HaRabim as well. Therefore the Chachamim prohibited carrying in the mavi unless a hechsher was done, an adjustment was performed. Now they gave us 2 options, 2 choices for hechsher of a mavi. One is a lechi, by erecting a side post at the entranceway, along the side of the entranceway of the mavi. By doing so, we made a separation between the mavi and Rishus HaRabim, and we called attention to its separateness. And by doing so, we removed the concern that perhaps one might confuse the mavi as being part of Rishus HaRabim. And therefore, once we have a lechi, we can carry in the mavi. There's another explanation for the lechi, that it serves as a mechitza. It serves as though it's actually creating a partition. The corner, the edge of the lechi, the side post, is as though it's continuing all across the entranceway of the mavi. We view it as though it's a partition, a full mechitza, and thus leaving the mavi surrounded and enclosed on all 4 sides. And certainly you can carry in this mavi as a result of this full enclosure. So this is the din of lechi, a side post erected at the entranceway, at the Pesach of the mavi, which is machshir and matir, tiltal, carrying in the mavi. There's another option called a koira, a cross beam, which would be erected across the entranceway of the mavi from side to side. And that too serves as a hechsher mavi, as an adjustment, as a heter for the mavi. It serves as a hefsek, whether it's because it's creating a heker, a recognition, it's calling attention to the separateness of the mavi from Rishus HaRabim, or because it serves as a mechitza as well. The corner of the mavi, the edge, the sharp edge of the koira, is as though it's descending downward as well, and enclosing the entranceway. and being seis in the entranceway and enclosing, surrounding the mavoi on all four sides, being that it has already the three walls plus the kaira, it's as though it has four mechitzas and is considered to be separate from Shesarabim and a place on its own and the mutter betiltel. So we have two approaches, two options, two choices of being machsher, adjusting the mavoi to be matir tiltel nemavoi. The Gemara at this point is holding that we're speaking about an askupa of a mavoi, and this entranceway of the mavoi contains a lechi. A lechi was erected as a hechsher for this mavoi, and the Brisa tells us, Acherim tell us, that certainly in the mavoi, one may carry as a result of the hechsher of the lechi. What about alongside the lechi itself? What about in the askupa, in the entranceway, on the threshold of the mavoi, which contains this lechi? Is there a heter tiltel alongside the width of the lechi as well? Says the Brisa, well, it depends. If the doorway to the mavoi is open, the doorway between the lechi and the mavoi is opened up wide, in that case, there's a heter to be metaltel alongside the lechi as well, on the area of the askupa, which is alongside the width of the lechi. If the doorway is closed, in that case, one may not carry alongside the lechi, meaning there's no heter tiltel on the askupa itself. Because if the door is open, then the lechi is adjacent to the mavoi, it is being machsher the mavoi, being matir the mavoi, it's being activated to provide heter and hechsher, and therefore it is matir not only the mavoi, but also the area alongside the lechi itself. However, if the door is closed, it's shutting out the lechi is not functioning anymore as a hechsher mavoi, it's not part of the mavoi, therefore there's no heter tiltel alongside the lechi. Says the Gemara again, the askupa, the threshold, can serve a dual purpose. It can serve a dual function. It can be considered to be part of this rishus or part of the other rishus, depending on the circumstance. When the door is open, then the askupa has a status of lifnim, and there's a heter to be metaltal. Pesach no, but if the door is closed, in that case kalachutz, the askupa is as though it's outside, and there's no heter tiltel in the askupa. Once again, Rashi explains, we're speaking about the askupa, the threshold, the entranceway of a mavoi, which contains a lechi at its entrance. And the lechi is matir, carrying within the mavoi. However, alongside the lechi itself, alongside the width of the lechi itself, can one carry there as well? Can one carry on the threshold, which is alongside the roichav, the width of the lechi? That depends whether the door is open or closed. If the door is open, then yes, you can carry there. If the door is closed, in that case, the lechi is disconnected from the mavoi, it's deactivated, not providing any heter, any hechsher, and there's no heter tilta alongside the lechi. Says the Gemara, "V'afa gav de lesle lechi." Do you mean to suggest that one may carry alongside the lechi post, even though there's no separate heter for that area? Meaning as follows. Rashi explains that the Gemara here is working with a premise that the lechi of a mavoi could only be matir, can only affect heter from the inner corner inward. Meaning we could only carry in the mavoi up until the interior corner of the lechi, but not alongside the width of the lechi itself. Rashi explains that the heker of the lechi, or the mechitza of the lechi, only functions from its inner corner, from its interior corner inward, but not past the corner outward. This is what we explained in the Gemara in Erevin, but we're working with this premise now. If this is the case, says the Gemara, how can you suggest that if the Pesach is Pesuach, the door is open to the mavoi, in which the lechi is functioning as a hechsher for the mavoi, therefore the result will be, not only can he carry in the mavoi itself, we can carry alongside the lechi as well, on the askupa, which is alongside the width of the lechi, which is past its interior corner. But that's not the case. Alongside the lechi, there's no heter. Says the Gemara again, Va'afagav de lesle lechi, even though we're only using one lechi, and thereby you are allowing the askupa, which is alongside the width of the lechi, even though it doesn't have its own lechi, it's an additional lechi on the outside of it, the askupa, but that's not the case. A lechi is only matir from its interior corner inward. Therefore, in order to be matir the skupa, you need another lechi in addition to the first lechi. You need to place another lechi on the outside of the skupa to be matir the skupa which lies within its interior corner. V'amar Rav Chama bar Guvya Marav, toicha Pesach, in the actual area of the entranceway of the skupa, sorach lechi acher latire. This requires an additional lechi, because we're working with the premise that a lechi can only be matir from its interior corner inward, but not alongside the width of the lechi. So once again, if we have a mavoi with a lechi positioned at the end, the lechi is only matir from the interior corner inward, but not alongside the actual lechi. And therefore, how can you suggest that if the doorway to the mavi is open, which connects the lechi to the mavi and activates the head of the mavi, by doing so you allow one to carry even alongside the width of this lechi on the askupa, which is alongside the roich of the lechi? But that's not the case, because the lechi cannot function, cannot activate, cannot affect heter alongside its width. It only affects heter from its interior corner inward into the mavi, but not alongside its width. And therefore, certainly on the askupa, there's no heter of the lechi, unless you make an additional lechi on the outside of the askupa. Placing another lechi on the outside of the askupa would certainly allow carrying within the askupa, which is within the interior corner of that additional lechi. So, this first interpretation is not really going to work. Says the Gemara, perhaps v'chitema, the less beidal dadal, the askupa is not 4 tfachim wide, and in that case, it's not a significant area, it's not a significant floor space, and it doesn't require its own heter. It's included in the heter of the mavoi. In that case, certainly the heter of the mavi extends over to the askupa, which is alongside the lechi, because it's a small area and it's batal. It's considered to be an extension of the mavi. In that case, as long as the door, as the Pesach is Pesuach, as long as the door to the Mavi is open and the Askupa is connected, is an extension of the Mavi, there will be a heter to carry in the Askupa alongside the Lechi. Is that the case? But we know that's not the case. Says the Gemara, V'chitema less bedal dadal. If it's a small insignificant area, it's not considered to be its distinct area, and therefore is included in the heter of the Lechi, of the Mavi. But that's not the case. V'amar Rav Chama bar Guvya Marav. In any case, no matter how large the Askupa is, no matter how large the floor space of the Pesach is, it will never be included in the heter. Toicha Pesach, the area of the entranceway, afal b'she'ein boi dal dalet. Even if it doesn't contain a floor space of 4x4, it's a very small, insignificant area. Nevertheless, it is not included in the heter of the lechi. And sorich lechi acher latir, it requires another lechi, which will be placed on the outside of this doorway to be matir, the doorway which is within the lechi. If that's the case, so once again we have difficulty explaining the halacha of acherim. We wanted to say that acherim are telling us that a mavi, an alleyway which has a lechi posted at the end of the mavi, will be matir the askupa as well. Not only be matir the mavi, but also the entranceway, the askupa, the threshold which is running alongside the width of the lechi. But that's not the case, because the lechi is only matir from the interior point, from the interior corner inward. We can only be matalta in the mavi up until the lechi. But alongside the lechi, there is no heter of lechi, because as Rashi explains, the heker of the lechi, the calling attention of the lechi, the mechitza of the lechi will only affect the area from within it, from within the interior corner inward, but not alongside the lechi itself. And even the Gemara says, even if the Pesach is very narrow, it is not 4 tfachim wide, it's insignificant, it is not a distinct area on its own, even in that case, the lechi will not be matir tiltal within the Pesach. If so, we have to look for another pshat in the Bryce. Amar Yehuda Marav. Indeed, we're speaking about a mavoi, a long alleyway, which has a threshold, an entranceway at the entrance of the mavoi. However, instead of erecting a lechi, it's speaking about a case where the mavi opted to use a crossbeam, which was lying across the entranceway of the mavi, and that provided the hechsher for the mavi, the heter tilta within the mavi. And we're speaking about, instead of a lechi, we're speaking about that they placed a kaira. Now, a koira, Rashi explains, was generally very narrow. It was generally 1 tefach wide. That was the minimum requirement for a koira. So now the doorway, the entranceway, the eskupa, which is wider than 4 tefachim, and contains a koira placed from side to side alongside the Pesach, from one side to the other across the entranceway of the Mavi. It thus leaves the entranceway, the eskupa, half roofed and half unroofed. It is chetzi mekura, but chetzi ein mekura. Partially it is covered by the koira, which is extending across the entranceway, and covers the interior part of the eskupa, the part of the eskupa which is facing the Mavi. But the other part of the eskupa, which is facing the street, facing outward, is unroofed. Again, says the Gemara, half of it is roofed, is covered by this koira, which is, say, 1 tefach wide, but half of the eskupa is unroofed, is uncovered. And the koira, the roofed part, is facing inward. In this case, the koira, Rashi explains, provides heter not only for the mavi itself, for the mavi which is within the koira, but it also provides heter for the area directly underneath the koira. This will be explained in the Gemara in Erevin. What's the difference between a lech and a koira? But a koira has the halacha that is matir, the area directly underneath it as well. In this case, says the Gemara, if the Pesach, the door between the eskupa, which contains the koira above it, if the Pesach between the eskupa and the mavi is open, thus the eskupa is adjacent, is connected, fully connected to the mavi. In this case, the koira is providing hechsher. It is activated. It is functioning as a koira. And just as it is matir, the mavi provides whatever the mavi needs, it also provides hechsher for the area underneath the koira as well. For instance, according to the shita, that the koira provides a mechitza. So we will view the koira as though it is descending downward and enclosing the area not only of the mavi behind it, but also of the actual area underneath the koira. Therefore, one would be able to carry and be metaltal underneath the koira. However, if the doorway between the koira and the mavi is closed, in that case, the koira is shut out from the mavi. It is not acting, is not serving, not functioning as a koira for this mavi. It is separated from the mavi by the doorway which is closed. In this case, the koira is deactivated. The koira can't serve its function, and it won't provide hechsher or heter, and won't have a din of a mechitza, not only for the mavi, which in this case doesn't need the koira because it's completely closed off, but it won't provide the din of koira for the mavi, and certainly not for the area underneath it as well. Why? Explains Rashi. Because, number one, it's not serving as a koira for the mavi. Number two, even if you'll ask, why can't the koira serve as an independent mechitza? We know there's a halacha l'meshmesina called pitikra yered v'soisim. Whenever we have a ceiling which has a sharp point, a sharp edge in front of it, so when we face this sharp edge, we view it as though the edge actually extending downward provides some sort of tzuras ha-pesach, like a doorpost, like a doorway, and we look at it as though it's descending downward and closing up the opening, and it's considered as though it's a mechitza. Says Rashi, fine. So this koira, which is suspended above the doorway of the mavi, was detached, was shut out from the mavi on account of the fact that the door was closed behind it. The door between the koira and the mavi was shut, and shut out the koira from the mavi. So we have a independent koira suspended above an eskupa on its own. Why isn't that sufficient to provide mechitza? Why can't we simply say that the pitikra, the corner of the koira, is yered v'soisem, descends and closes off at least the area underneath the koira, and that makes a full-fledged mechitza, and encloses this area underneath the koira, and one should be able to carry underneath the koira. Says Rashi, but we need to know another halacha. That part of the halacha l'meshmesina is that any mechitza, any din of mechitza, is only if it provides enclosure to a significant area of at least 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim. Less than that, there can be no mechitza. Therefore, says Rashi, underneath the koira is a very narrow area. It's only an area which is wide 1 tefach, as we said earlier. Therefore, we cannot create a mechitza for such a small area. Even if we say pitikra yered v'soisim, the mouth, the corner of the tikra of the koira, will descend and go down and close off the area underneath the Korah, but it's too small an area, too insignificant to have the din mechitza applied to it. It does not have a din mechitza unless it's enclosing a significant area of 4x4 tfachim. Therefore, says Rashi, when the Pesach is null, when the doorway between the mavoi and the Korah is closed, and thereby shutting out the Korah from the mavoi, in this case, the Korah is not functioning as a Korah. It can't function as a Korah for the mavoi because it's separated by the doorway which is closed, and it can't either create its own mechitza by applying the klal of pitikur yoyed v'soisim to enclose the area underneath the Korah because it's too narrow an area. And in that case, the halacha will be that this whole area of the askupa has a din kilachutz, and one may not carry on the askupa. Let's see the words again. Omar Vidamarav. This is the third approach, third interpretation of the halacha v'acher. Hacha b'askupa small b'askina. We're speaking about a entranceway, a threshold of a mavoi. However, instead of it containing a lechi, it actually contains a kaira, which is suspended above this entranceway from side to side. Chetzi mekura, v'chetzi shein mekura, leaving the askupa half roofed and half unroofed because the kaira is narrow and the askupa is wide. So when the wide askupa contains a kaira lying across it, it will end up being that half the askupa is covered and half is uncovered. The kura kaplet pnim, and the kaira, the roofed part, is facing the mavoi, and the uncovered area is facing outward. If so, it depends. What is the halacha of this askupa? It depends if or not the doorway is open or closed. Pesach pasuach kelefnim. If the door in between the askupa and the mavoi is open, thus the kaira is functioning as a kaira for the mavoi. It's providing a hechsher for the mavoi. It's providing a mechitza or a heker for the mavoi. In that case, the kaira is activated, and it'll provide heter for the area directly underneath this kaira as well. In that case, one may carry in this part of the askupa that is underneath the kaira. However, Pesach, no! If the door in between the kaira and the mavoi is closed off, and thereby shutting out the kaira from the mavoi, disconnecting the kaira from the mavoi, deactivating the kaira, in that case, the kaira is not serving anymore as a hechsher. Kilachutz. So the space underneath the kaira has a din of outside, has a din similar to Rishus Rabbim, and one may not carry underneath the kaira because the kaira is not functioning, is not serving anymore. And as Rashi explains, we can't either apply the halacha of pi tikkur yored v'soisim, where the corner of the tikkur of the roof of the kaira descends and shuts down and encloses the area underneath it because it's too small an area to apply that concept. It's just an area which is 1 tefach wide, and we require a minimum of a floor space of 4x4 in order to apply any dinim of partitions and mechitzas and enclosures. Says Rav Ashi Amar. Rav Ashi has another approach to this halacha v'acher. What is the scenario? It is as follows. La'olam b'skupas bayis askina. We're speaking about a threshold, an entranceway to a bayis, not a chatzar, not a mavoi, but rather an ordinary home. And we're speaking about the askupa, the threshold, is actually roofed. But it's not roofed with one board. It actually has 2 beams running across. So we have the bayis, we have the askupa in front of the bayis, and we have one beam running across, we have another beam running across the askupa. And there's a small gap in between the beams, which is actually less than 3 tfachim. So generally we would apply the halacha of lavud. Any gap which is less than 3 tfachim is considered to be sasam, considered to be closed off. We view both beams as though they're extending to each other, and they're providing one singular roofing above this askupa. However, says the Gemara, we're speaking about that each beam is narrow, doesn't have a width of 4 tfachim. So we have, for instance, a beam of 2 tfachim lying next to another beam which is also wide 2 tfachim, and we have a small gap of 2 tfachim in between the beams. And they were covering the skupa, the threshold, in this manner. So let's see the Gemara inside. Rav Ashi Omar lo'ilam b'skupas bayis askina. We're speaking about a threshold in front of a home. Ukegan shekira b'shtei kairos. This askupa is covered, is roofed with 2 beams running across it. She'ein buzu arba, ve'ein buzu arba. Each one of these beams is less than 4 tfachim wide. Ve'ein bein zu lezu shloisha. And the gap in between both beams is less than 3 tfachim. However, v'deles ba'emtza, the problem is there's a door in between both beams. In this case, the door can be mafsik, can provide a hefsik, can interrupt the beams, and perhaps this allow the connection. As the Gemara explains, delas ba'emtza, there's a door in between both beams. So we have a home, we have a skupa, we have two beams running across the skupa. Each beam is less than 4 tefachim wide. There's a small gap in between. Now there's a door running between both beams, underneath both beams. Not actually between them, but underneath them. So in this case, if the door is open, we can view both beams as though they're connected. We apply the concept of lavud, and we view them as one large roof. In that case, they certainly would provide protection, adequate protection to the area underneath it. They have a din of a tikra, of a ceiling, and we apply the klal of pi tikra v'saisam. We view the front, the corner of the tikra, as though it descends and closes off and encloses the area, the entire area of the skupa, which is situated underneath these two kairos. However, if the pesach, which is underneath, between these two kairos, if it is closed, in that case, it is separating the skupa into two, it is dividing, it is splitting into two, and thus leaving each kaira with only a small area to cover. It's only covering an area of 2 tefachim. In that case, as we mentioned earlier, a mechitza cannot be activated. The halacha of mechitza, of partition, is only when it is accomplishing a mechitza for an area which is 4 by 4 tefachim. When the pesach is null, it is dividing the askupa, dividing the kairos into two. In this case, the kaira cannot provide mechitza for the area underneath it, and the askupa will have a din kalachutz, will have a din like shisaram, and one might not carry in the askupa area which is open to shisaram. Once again, says the Gemara, Rav Ashi Amar lo'olam b'skupas bayis askinan chugon shakir b'shtei kairos shem b'zuar ba v'em b'zuar ba. So that we have two beams running across, each one is less than 4 tefachim wide. V'em b'zul zul shloisha, and between them there is a small gap of less than 3 tefachim, where ordinarily the concept of lavud would apply to close up the gap, to connect these two sections of the roof. However, v'delas be'emtza, there's a door in between. If so, it depends on the position of the door. Pesach pasuach kilafnim, if the door is open and it's not interrupting, and not being mafsik between the kairos, in the middle of the askupa, in that case, kilafnim, the askupa is fully roofed. It is roofed with a roof 4 tefachim wide, and we apply the halacha of pi tikra v'saisam, and we view as though the area of the skupa is completely enclosed. Pesach no, however, if the door is closed off, thereby cutting off, dividing the skupa into two, and each kaira is only covering a small section of the skupa, in this case kilachutz, the skupa, the outer part of the skupa, which is facing Shisarabim, has a din kilachutz, has a din like Shisarabim, and it is not considered to be contained and enclosed by the mechitza of the tikra. So in summary, regarding the halacha of a skupa, the Brisa tells us in the name of Achirim that a skupa can be either considered kilafnim or kilachutz. It depends. If the pesach is pasuach, if the door is open, then the skupa is kilafnim, and one may carry there. If the pesach is null, if the door is closed, then the skupa is shut out, and it has the din kalachutz, and one may not carry in the skupa. We have 4 approaches to this halacha. Number 1, the Gemara suggests that we're speaking about a skupa of a mavi, a threshold of a mavi, which is an alleyway surrounded by 3 sides. The 4th side is open to Sharabim, and a lechi was erected, a doorpost was erected at the entranceway of the mavi, and therefore the mavi is mutar b'tiltal. One may carry inside the mavi on account of the lechi providing a separation between the mavi and Sharabim. However, what about the area alongside the lechi? What about the askupa itself, the entranceway itself? That depends. If the door between the lechi and the mavi is open, in that case, the askupa is part of the mavi. The lechi is not only matir the mavi, but it's also matir the askupa, and one may carry in the askupa. If the door is closed, thereby shutting out the lechi from the mavoi, one may not carry alongside the lechi, and the askupa is kilachutz. The Gemara says, how can you say that? Doesn't the area, the width alongside the lechi, require another heter on its own? The lechi is only matir from the point, the interior corner inward, but not alongside the lechi itself. So how can you suggest that there's a heter tilt alongside the lechi? The Gemara proceeded and said, well, perhaps we're speaking about that the area alongside the lechi does not have 4x4 tefachim. It's insignificant of an area, and therefore one certainly has a heter to carry alongside the lechi. Says the Gemara, but that's not so. We learned that even if it's a small, insignificant area, there's no heter to carry alongside the lechi. The Gemara proceeded and said that perhaps we're speaking about an entirely different case. We're speaking about a mavi that has a hechshav but not lechi, rather has a hechshav, a koira, a crossbeam, which is lying across the entranceway of the mavi, and the koira is very narrow. It does not cover an area of 4 tefachim. It's merely a tefach wide. In this case, said the Gemara, the koira is matir, the mavi, and the koira is matir, the area which is directly underneath it as well. But that depends. Depends if the door in between this koira and the mavi is open or closed. If the doorway is open, in that case the koira is providing heter to the mavi and heter for the area underneath the koira as well. But if the door is closed, door separating between the askupa and the mavi is closed, in that case the koira is shut out from the mavi. It's deactivated. It's not serving to be matir the mavi, and certainly it can't be matir the area underneath the koira as well. Rashi explains, since the koira is only 1 tefach wide, it can't serve as a mechitza with the klal of pi tikro yored v'saisim. We can't view it as though it's descending and closing off the area underneath it, because for that we require a floor space of 4x4 tefachim. Since this koira is only 1 tefach wide, all the halachas of mechitzas will not be applied in this case. Rav Ashi had another interpretation to the halacha of achirim. Rav Ashi says we're speaking about an askup of a bias. We're not speaking about an approach to Rishus Harabim. We're not speaking about an alleyway. We're speaking about an askupa of a bias, where the askupa has a double roof. It has 2 kairos, 2 beams running along it. Each beam is less than 4 tefachim wide, but in between them there's only a small gap of less than 3 tefachim. Ordinarily, the klal, the halacha, the rule of lavud will be applied to connect both beams as one to provide coverage for the area underneath them. But the Brisa tells us, although ordinarily that would be fine in the case when there is a pesach in between them, separating the area into 2. In that case, it depends if the pesach is pasuach or no. If the pesach is open, thereby allowing us to connect both kairos as one, they'll both be covering a great area of a skupa which has 4 tefachim. In that case, the kairos are providing coverage, providing mechitza. We say pi tikra yored v'saisim. The tikra, the roof, is as though it descends and provides coverage and enclosure to this area underneath the kaira, because it's large enough to have the rules and the concept of mechitza applied to it. But if the pesach, which is situated in between these 2 kairas, is closed off, it divides the skupa into 2, thus leaving each kaira with only a small area of coverage, which is less than 4 tefachim. The concept of mechitzas can't be applied in this case, and therefore we can't say that the kaira provides coverage and mechitza to the area underneath it, and the area underneath it will have a din kalachutz, and one may not carry underneath that kaira. Now Taisus points out that whenever we discuss the askupa, and we say askupa is kalachutz, the term kalachutz, which is referring to Rishus Harabim, doesn't mean to say that the askupa is literally like Rishus Harabim. It certainly isn't. An askupa is an area which is enclosed, which is surrounded by 3 mechitzas, which minat Torah, biblically, it certainly is considered to be a full-fledged shayachid. There's only an isra d'Rabbanan to carry in an exposed askupa. Nevertheless, as Taisus, the Gemara uses the lashon, the term kalachutz. It's merely a comparison. We use it in reference to the isser tiltal, that in a certain regard, the askupa is compared to Rishus Harabim kalachutz with reference to the Issa tiltal. Just as in Rishus Harabim we're not allowed to carry, so too in the skupa we're not allowed to carry. However, it's only certainly an Issa d'Rabbanan. Continues the Gemara, what was the final halacha of Achirim? If the threshold was 10 tefachim high and wide 4 by 4 tefachim, it has its own status, it's considered to be its own domain. Rashi explains, even though we're speaking about a elevated area, 10 tefachim high, 4 by 4 tefachim wide, which is next to a Rishus HaYachid as well. So we have this elevated area which is adjacent to a home. We have two Rishus HaYachids adjacent to each other. Nevertheless, Achirim teach us, Rameya teaches us, one may not transfer an item from one Rishus HaYachid to the other Rishus HaYachid. Why is that so? Explains the Gemara. This supports Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Dimi, who told us as follows in the name of Rameya. The Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Dimi, Oymar Hayi Rameya. Rameya used to say as follows: Kol makam shata moitze, beis rishuyos. Whenever we find two areas which they look like two domains, vein rishus achas, but really technically they're considered to be one rishus. For instance, a case where you have a chatzar, a courtyard, completely surrounded, completely a rishus hayachid. Situated in the middle of this chatzar is a hill, is a elevated area, which is 10 tefachim high and has a floor space of 4 by 4. Nevertheless, we cannot transfer from the chatzar to this post, to this amud. Again, kol makam shata moitze beis rishuyos. Whenever we find two rishuyos, vein rishus achas, but really they're one rishus. Kigoyin, for instance, amud b'rishus hayachid, a post in the middle of rishus hayachid, gavaya yud v'rachav dalad asur lekatef olav. One may not transfer an item on it from the chatzar. Why? Gzeira mishum tel b'rishus harabim. Although this case is perfectly permitted, however, Rameya said, we're concerned. Rameya made a gzeira, a decree, to safeguard from doing the same in the Rishus HaRabim. Perhaps if one will be allowed to transfer an item, to be mekatif, to adjust his item, his load, to transfer something from the chatzar onto the tail which is in the chatzar, the elevated portion in the chatzar, one may mistakenly do so even in Rishus HaRabim. When he's walking in Rishus HaRabim, he'll see a post which is Gavoya Yud and Rachav Dalad. He'll also mistakenly use it as a adjusting stop, as a makim kituf, transfer an item onto that post, and certainly that case is prohibited because he's transferring from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid. So on account of that concern, Rameir prohibited even transferring an item onto a post which is situated in a Rishus HaYachid. The Taisus points out this is only applies to an elevated area which has no mechitzos, because certainly Rameir does not prohibit one from carrying an item from the first floor of the home up to the second floor of the home, even though it's elevated 10 tefachim, because it has mechitzos. It's considered to be a separate entity, and there's no room for concern to confuse it with a tail in Rishus HaRabim. Taisus also points out that this is only regarding a set place, like a post, an amud, but a utensil, a kli, something which is mobile. The gzeira of Rameir does not apply in that case. One certainly can put an item onto an elevated area which is in Rishus HaYachid if that is a utensil, a kli, for instance, a grinder, or etc., one of those type of things which are metaltal, because it's not similar, it's not to be confused with a tail with a post in Rishus HaRabim. Continues the Mishnah. Lo yeshiv adam l'fnei asaper samach mincha. One should not go sit down in front of the barber for a haircut when it's very close to the time of davening mincha. Now, how does this halacha come into Masechah Shabbos? Rashi explains, since in the next Mishnah we have halachas regarding prohibiting certain activities close to Shabbos, for concern that this activity will extend into Shabbos and bring one to transgress Isser Shabbos. So on account of those halachas, the Mishnah begins giving us another couple of halachas which fall into a similar category. One may not begin an activity so close to Zman Tfilas Mincha, for concern that perhaps these activities will extend and draw out and preclude and bring a person to miss out the Mincha experience. One should not sit down in front of the barber close to Mincha, meaning within a half hour of Zman Tfilas Mincha, because perhaps this will cause him to miss the opportunity to daven. he shouldn't do so until he davens mincha. Similarly, says the Mishnah, you shouldn't go to a bathhouse, not to a tanner, a tanner factory, a tannery, and not to have a meal, and not to conduct a court case. Because these things, going into a barber for a haircut, going to a bathhouse to take a bath, going to the tannery to go ahead and process the hides, to go to begin eating, to begin a meal, or to begin a court case. These things are activities that can draw and can get drawn out and extend themselves up to the point that one may actually lose out on the opportunity to daven mincha. However, once you've begun any of these activities, there's no requirement to interrupt and to stop. He can conclude this activity and then go and daven mincha. Rashi points out, of course, we're speaking about that there's enough time available after the conclusion of this activity to daven mincha. But if he knows that this activity will get drawn out to the point that will not leave him enough time available to daven, then certainly he must be mafsik immediately, interrupt his activity and daven mincha, and then resume his activity. Concludes the Mishnah, mafsik and the krishma, one must interrupt, one must be mafsik to recite krishma, since it is a mitzvah min HaTorah. So if one has begun any of these aforementioned activities, when it already has become, the Zman Krishma has already arrived, or it was very close within the half hour of the beginning of Zman Krishma, in that case the Mishnah tells us, Krishma is more stringent, it is a mitzvah d'oraisa, and it requires hefsek, immediate interruption. However, regarding davening, there's no such requirement. Rashi points out, this seems to be a repetition from the Reish, and the Gemara will discuss it. Explains the Gemara, Hay samuch la mincha. Which mincha are we speaking about? The Mishnah tells us that within close proximity to mincha, one may not begin these various activities. Which mincha are we speaking about? Hay samuch la mincha. Mincha gedola, we're speaking about the greater mincha. Now we know that the tefillas ha-mincha corresponds to the tamid sheben arbaim, and the tefillas ha-mincha is meant to be recited during the zman of the akrava of the tamid sheben arbaim. What was the zman akrava of the korban tamid sheben arbaim is hamikdash? Very simple, ben arbaim, in between the two darknesses. What are the two darknesses? The first darkness begins a half hour after midday. That's when the sun begins to lean towards the west and starts generating very slight shadows. So that is considered to be the first darkness. What is the second darkness? Very simple. That is nightfall. So in between 6.5 hours of the day up until nightfall, that was the Zman Hakrovas Tomesh Ben Arbaim, and thus that is also the Zman of Tfilas Mincha. Now when we speak about hours, certainly we're speaking about Shosh Zmaniyos. We take the entire daylight period and we split it into 12 even sections. Each one is considered to be 1 hour, 1 shah. Says the Gemara, Mincha Gedola, the greater Mincha, is referring to the beginning of the Zman Hakrovas HaTamid, which was at the point of 6.5 hours into the day. Technically speaking, one may be makriv of the Tamish Rabbaim beginning at that point. However, practically speaking, the common practice in the Beis HaMikdash was not to be makriv the Korban Tamid so early, but rather it was much later than that. It was actually hukrav, it was shechted 8.5 hours into the day and offered at the point of 9.5 hours into the day. And that is considered to be mincha ketana, the small mincha, since it leaves only a small portion of the day remaining that allows that for the allowance of Tfilas Mincha. So the Mincha Gedola is from the point of 6.5 hours onward. That is a great Mincha, since there's a large portion of a day still available for Tfilas Mincha. And the Mincha Ketana is referring to once you get to the point of 9.5 hours into the day, and it only leaves us with a small portion of the day remaining for Tfilas Mincha. So which Mincha is the Mishnah referring to? One may not begin these various activities, since they may draw you into a prolonged activity and cause one to miss out on an opportunity to daven mincha. Which mincha are we speaking about? Samach la mincha. Within a half hour of Tfilas Mincha, of the Zman Tfilas Mincha, one may not begin these activities. Which mincha are we speaking about? Are we speaking about mincha gedola? And a half hour before that, one may not begin these activities. Or we're speaking about mincha ketana, which begins at 9.5 hours into the day. And at the beginning of 9 hours, which is a half hour prior to mincha ketana, one may not begin these activities. Again, says Gemara, why is it prohibited? There's such a large portion of the day remaining, and there's no valid concern that a person will miss his mincha. There's a very great portion of the day remaining, and there's no reason to be concerned. Ella rather wants to be speaking out some mincha ketana. The Mishnah tells us that close to mincha ketana, meaning within a half hour of 9.5 hours into the day, which is mincha ketana, one should not begin these major activities. Because in that case, certainly there's a concern that once he begins, he will get drawn out and he will become preoccupied and miss out on the opportunity to daven mincha. Continues the Gemara. The Mishnah tells us one may not begin these activities, but once you begin, you don't need to interrupt. This seems to contradict, to be a refutation of Rabbi Shimon Levi. Once the time to daven mincha arrives, one may not taste anything before he davens mincha. So certainly in a case where he's in the middle of his meal, he must interrupt, be mafsik, the meal, to daven mincha. So this seems not to be consistent with our Mishnah, which tells us that once he begins the meal, he doesn't need to interrupt. Says the Gemara, no. Our Mishnah is speaking about mincha gedola. Rabbi Shimon Levi is unrelated to our Mishnah. He's speaking about mincha ketana. One may not be toyem as soon as it's zman tefillas hamincha arrives. Which tefillas hamincha? Mincha ketana. Our Mishnah is unrelated to that. It's speaking about mincha gedola, and therefore it's not connected to Rabbi Shimon Levi. So again, our Mishnah tells us that even some of mincha gedola, from the point of chatzos midday, which is a half hour before mincha gedola, one may not begin these major activities. However, once he begins them in mischilu, then he doesn't need to interrupt, as Rashi pointed out, provided he knows there'll be enough time to daven later on. If so, how are we going to understand our Mishnah? How could you prohibit one from beginning these activities at midpoint, at chatzos, which leaves him so much time available to daven mincha? There's no valid concern for him missing out on the opportunity to daven mincha. Says the Gemara, we're speaking about a half hour within the time of mincha gedola, which is midday. Why do you prohibit these activities? Says the Gemara, we're speaking about unique and prolonged major activities. When we're speaking about a haircut, we're not speaking about an ordinary haircut. We're speaking about this very unique haircut, which was taken by this individual called Ben El-Asha. He was the son-in-law of a Rebbe. The Gemara tells us that he used to spend a great deal of money to demonstrate on himself the unique haircut which was given to a Kohen Gadol. The Gemara describes this haircut as being Rosh Shalzeh. The tip of one hair was a bit tzaddik, Shalzeh was on the root of the next hair, some type of a unique haircut style. So he used to take this unique haircut, which was indeed a very serious affair, and it was a very prolonged activity. This unique haircut is prohibited. Certainly an ordinary haircut is allowed to be taken at that point in the day. So the Mishnah is referring to these specific major activities. Is speaking about kula milchas. We're speaking about the entire process of the merchatz, which requires washing their head, their hair, washing their body in hot water and cold water, taking the steam bath. It was a prolonged process, a very major affair. And therefore, one shouldn't do so, even early on in the day. The bursaki, going into the tannery, was speaking about the bursaki gedola, a major tannery affair, a major project. There's a lots of hides to process, and this is the beginning of the process. He's beginning to process them. In that case, certainly there's a concern, even so early in the day, that it will cause him to miss mincha. When the Mishnah speaks about eating, we're speaking about suda gedola, a large meal like a wedding, which has lots of guests and tends to drag on and to get prolonged. We're speaking about tchilas din, the beginning of a case, which requires the arguments to be heard and the deliberations and etc., etc., it can prolong, get drawn out, and bring him to miss mincha. So the Mishnah is speaking about these unique activities, which are major and prolonging activities, which indeed can get drawn out, even if they're begun early in the day. Therefore, there's a prohibition to begin these activities. Samach mincha, which mincha? Even samach mincha gdoila. But ordinary activities, one certainly may begin those activities when they are samach mincha gdoila, when they are still so early on in the day. Continues the Gemara. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar, no, la'olam b'tasperes didan. The Mishnah prohibits one to begin activities samach mincha gdoila, even ordinary activities, even the tasperes didan, even an ordinary haircut. Why? Why shouldn't one begin and sit down in front of the barber for an ordinary haircut? Even if it's so early in the day, we're concerned perhaps the zug, the barber's scissors, will break. Until he goes and finds another one, he'll miss out on the opportunity to daven mincha. Regarding merchatz as well, even just simply to take the steam bath, which is a relatively minor activity. Why shouldn't one begin this? Perhaps he'll faint and he won't be able to daven any longer. Even just merely to inspect the process. Why shouldn't he do it? Perhaps he'll see a flaw in his merchandise or matri, he'll become preoccupied, and he won't be able to daven. Even a small meal, why? Perhaps will become drawn out. Regarding a din, even begemara din, even if it's only for the verdict, which is a minor affair. Perhaps he'll find a new approach, a new angle to the court case, and he'll go annul the verdict and overturn the din and begin anew. So according to Rabbi Yaakov, even relatively minor activities carry with them a risk of becoming drawn out and prolonged, and one may not begin them even samach mincha gdoila, even so early on in the day, because perhaps he'll become preoccupied and busy and he'll miss out on an opportunity to daven. So in summary, the Mishnah taught us that one may not begin 5 activities samach mincha gdoila, and we have 2 approaches in the Gemara. The first approach in the Gemara is that we're speaking about major activities. A haircut is speaking about this unique tasperis of Ben Elasha. A merchatz is speaking about kula milsa, the merchatz, the entire process of the merchatz. Bursaki is a bursaki gedoyla, lots of hide, the beginning of the process. Lachila was speaking about a suda gedoyla. Din is tchilas din. And therefore, one may not begin these activities, even if it's still early on in the day. It is samach mincha gedoyla. According to Rav Yaakov, even minor activities, relatively short activities, have the potential of becoming drawn out. Regarding a haircut, this is a chashash, shamei shavar zug. Regarding the merchatz, shamei aleph. Regarding the bursaki, he might see something wrong, become preoccupied. Regarding food, the meal might get drawn out. Regarding a din, even if it's the verdict, the din might become overturned and might become drawn out and bring him to miss his tefillah as hamincha. Continues the Gemara. So the Mishnah taught us that one doesn't begin, but once he begins, once you begin, you don't need to interrupt. Now, what constitutes beginning? Mei masai has cholas tasperis. What is the beginning of the haircut? Once they place the cloth of the barbers on his knees. Once he removes the maferis, the cloth, the first article of clothing from himself, that is considered to be the beginning of the merchatz. Once he begins, he doesn't need to interrupt for davening. What is considered to be the beginning of the bursaki process? Once he ties his sleeves between his shoulders, which somehow enabled him to go ahead and process the hides. Once he washes his hands. Once he unfastens his belt. It's actually not a machlekes. It depends who we're speaking to. Because the Bnei Bavel used to have their belts tightened very tight, and they would have to unfasten it at the beginning of a meal. So Rav Chanina is speaking about to the Bnei Bavel, which required this before their meal. Halon valahu. So the Bnei Bavel, which is lon, our people, they needed to do a Hataras Chagura, and that is what Rav Chanina is referring to. V'alahu, the Bnei Eretz Yisrael didn't conduct themselves in this manner. And in that case, what is considered to be Tchilas Suda? Says Rav, Meshayitol Yodav. So we have the halacha of Ischilu Ein Mafsikin. Once you've begun, you don't need to interrupt. What is the Tchilas Taspiris? Once they put the Ma'afiris al Birkov. What is the Tchilas HaMerchatz? Once you remove the Ma'afiris. What is the Tchilas Bursiki? When you tie the sleeves between Kseifa, between his shoulders. What is considered to be Tchilas Achila? To the Bnei Eretz Yisrael, once they wash their hands. To the Bnei Bavel, even prior to washing their hands, once they unfasten their belt. So this is regarding Tfilas HaMincha. What's the halacha regarding Tfilas Aris? Continues the Gemara. Amar Abaye. Hani Chavrim Bavloi, our Babylonian colleagues, who fasten their belts tightly. So what is the halacha regarding Ma'ariv? Lamanda Amar Tfilas Aris Rishus. So you know there's a machlekes. What is the status of Aris? Some say it's a Rishus, it's optional. Some say it's Chayv, it's compulsory. So according to the Shita, Tfilas Aris Rishus, Kivan the Shar Lehem Yoneh, once they unfasten their belt for the meal, we don't trouble them to refasten it, they may proceed with their meal and then go and daven Ma'ariv. According to the Shita that it's compulsory, we do oblige them to trouble themselves to refasten their belts and daven Ma'ariv. Says the Gemara, why is that? Why, according to the Shita, that Arvis is chayva, do you require him to refasten the belt? V'atfilas mincha, regarding mincha delakuli al mechayvehi, all agree that mincha is chayva. Nevertheless, we say, Utanan, we learned in the Mishnah, once you've begun the process of the meal, you don't need to interrupt. What is the beginning? What constitutes a tchila? For the Bnei Bavel, it was as soon as they unfastened their belt. Once they did that, it's considered to be tchila suda, they may proceed with their meal. So why regarding Arvis do you say that even though you unfasten your belt, you need to refasten the belt? According to the Shita, that Arvis is chayva. Why is it more stringent than Mincha, which is chayva? Says the Gemara, is different on two accounts. Number one, over there by Mincha, which is a daytime meal, Shichrus is not shchich, it's not common to get intoxicated, therefore there's no concern if he proceeds with his meal that he will lose out on Tfilas Mincha. Hacha by Tfilas Aris, shchicha shichrus, by a nighttime meal, it is shchich, it is common to become intoxicated, therefore if we allow him to proceed with his meal, perhaps he will become shikr, and he will lose out on an opportunity to have Ma'ariv. Inami, another difference, Mincha, given the Kviyalei Zimna, since Mincha has a set time, a prescribed time, it can only be done until nighttime, until the end of the day. Mirsus, so he's agitated, he's concerned. It's on the forefront of his conscience to keep in mind to daven Mincha prior to the time expiring. Therefore, he won't neglect, even if he proceeds with his meal, he will leave himself enough time after the meal to daven. However, Arvis, given the Kollel Yazman Arvis, since he can daven Ma'ariv the whole night, it's not so limited like Mincha. Lo Mir says he won't be so concerned about it, he won't be agitated about Ma'ariv, and he'll keep on pushing it off and postponing it. Vasil Mifsha, and if he proceeds with his meal, he might neglect to daven Ma'ariv entirely. So we have two reasons why Arvis is more stringent than Mincha, and therefore, according to the Shita that feels Arvis is chayva, even if he already unfastened his belt, he must refasten it and proceed to daven Ma'ariv, and then go back to his meal. Maskav l'rasheshes. I don't understand, he says. According to the Shita, that feels Arvis Rishus, you allow him to proceed with his meal once he unfastened his belt. We don't trouble him to refasten it. Is it really such a trouble? What's the big deal to refasten your belt? Is it such a tircha l'meisar to refasten, to retighten the miyani your belt? Void another kasha. Let him go get up as is, with his unfastened belt, and daven as is. Says the Gemara, that's not a kasha. He can't do that. You must prepare yourself properly to cross when you approach Hashem to daven. Therefore, the second kasha of Sheshes is not difficult. Taisus points out that the Gemara doesn't really relate to the first kasha. Apparently, the Gemara held, yes, it is a trouble to go ahead and refasten this tight belt, and therefore, according to the Shita, that Aris is Rishus, we don't require him to do so. Now, Taisus points out that, of course, even according to the Shita, that Tfilas Aris is Rishus, we're not meant to neglect Tfilas Aris for no reason. Yaakov Avinu was Masakin Aris. Aris corresponds to the Evorim which were brought on the Mizbech the entire night. It's a very important, significant tefillah. It's only in a case where there's a tircha, as in our case, of the refastening the belt, so he may postpone the Arvis until later, or in the case when there's a mitzvah, which is getting in the way, he should do the mitzvah and instead of davening Ma'ariv. But bechina, for no reason, one certainly is not meant to neglect Ma'ariv. He certainly is meant to daven Ma'ariv if he has the opportunity to do so.